Hi, Filipina Rod here. Welcome back. I wanted to tell you a quick story about something that was just passed on to me from my film community here in the US. So, there was a relatively young Filipina who had married a bit older American man and had migrated to the US a couple of years ago on a K-1 visa. She didn't really know the man very well before coming to the US, and while the American partner seemed a bit temperamental and vengeful at times, she thought she could make it work. So, after she arrived in the US, she befriended a Filipino who worked in a local church together with a priest who is also a Filipino. So, the young woman was very dedicated in going to Mass and made an effort to socialize while she was there. Time passed, and this young woman had missed a few masses, so her friends started to worry about her. So her friend and the priest decided to pay her a visit and stop by the apartment she shared with her husband. And they found this young Filipina alone in the apartment, and she looked quite distressed. And it turned out that a man had left this young Filipina and told her he wanted a divorce. Over the last several months, the relationship had degraded, and the man kept telling this young Filipina that she was crazy. Now, she'd never questioned her own sanity until the man started bringing it up and he started pointing out certain things. So, the thing that concerned her the most was that she started to hear things that her husband said he couldn't hear. So there were noises of baby crying, beeps high, pitched screeches that she could hear very faintly. She'd hear them in her living area, in her bedroom while she was trying to sleep, in her car too, kitchen, and even in her bathroom. So the noises were rather random and not really consistent, but were always very, very faint. So her friend and the priest were very concerned with her appearance that it seemed to be a degraded mental condition. So the woman admittedly explained that she was hearing strange noises in her head and that the marriage had completely fallen apart and she didn't know what she was going to do. So the young Filipina made them a cup of coffee and had the priest sit on her favorite chair as a symbol of respect and continued telling them about the problem she was having. So while the priest was sitting on this chair, he heard the sounds of a baby crying faintly, and he asked the other two women if they hear what he just heard. But neither of them heard a noise. But this young woman who was getting divorced asked what the priest heard, and the priest said he's hearing a baby cry. And the woman gets all excited, saying she's hearing a baby cry too sometimes, very randomly and not for very long. Now, she hadn't told the priest about the baby crying. She hadn't told him that it was a faint sound, that she was only hearing things that nobody else could hear, and she assumed it was in her head. So the priest, being a well educated, suspicious individual, started looking around, wondering if there wasn't something else going on. So he looked under the chair, he looked in the lamps, he looked under the lamps, and he looked under the coffee table, under the end tables, and he was checking for everything that may be on the rug, sofa, table, and he even checked the light fixture. He then decided to check the cushion to the chair, and he unzipped it and reached his hand in there, and he pulled out the small practical joy joke noisemakers that they sell on Amazon. I'm flashing it here because I actually Googled it since I'm not in fact familiar with this thing. But the most famous of which is called Annoyatron. But there are various brands knockoffs. Okay, moving on. So the priest then asked the woman where else she was hearing the sounds, and she said she heard them at night when she was in bed. So they went to her bedroom and they started looking in and around the bed, and they found one between the box springs and the mattress, which was eliciting a small beep every few minutes. Then they went into the bathroom and found another one in the bathroom. It's underneath the sink, tapped bathroom, and found another one in the bathroom underneath the sink, taped behind it where you couldn't see it. And then they went to the kitchen and they couldn't find one in the spot, and it's probably still there to this day, but they saw what was really going on. Her now ex husband, who is still married to her at the time, had planted these devices around the house to convince her that she was going crazy and hearing the strange noises and voices. So this Filipina brought with her a lot of superstitions and was a firm believer in ghosts, and she thought that was she was being haunted or she was going crazy. But whatever was happening, she was having serious problems. So it never occurred to her that her husband had done this just to wear on her mental state. So the woman called her now ex-husband while the priest and her friend were still in that apartment and confronted him about these noisemakers. But the man just laughed at her. At that moment, the woman understood that there was no help in saving the marriage, and even the priest agreed that maybe they shouldn't be together, and this horrible prank he pulled on her could be grounds for annulment in the eyes of the church. The Filipino quickly moved out of the apartment and not knowing what other pranks he may pull and moved in with her friend while she processed the divorce papers. But eventually, the woman got her own apartment and is currently living quite comfortably alone with no desire to start a new relationship anytime soon. So, guys, my point in telling you the story is to remind everyone that there are some bad people in this world that can have a negative impact on your psyche. And maybe you want to do your due diligence and make sure you know the person before you decide to marry him or her and move halfway around the world to the US to live with them. I thought this was one of the most interesting stories I had running to, and I just wanted to share it with you guys today. So thanks again for watching till the end, and please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Then leave your comments below if you want to hear more stories about Filipina American married life and relationship here in the US. And see you again next week. Bye.